Both the EU and Turkey use the same framing of strategic autonomy, and there is definitely a geopolitical and economic case for alignment. But for now, it appears politically very unlikely. As we explain in our report, in Turkey, strategic autonomy has emerged as a guarantor of sovereignty and national identity. In a more interdependent, post-Western, multipolar world, Turkey is attempting to transform itself into one of the many poles of power, a transregional power that can bargain with the EU and the United States as an equal. Meanwhile, in the EU, strategic autonomy has been used to describe efforts to turn Europe into a more capable security and defense actor when the reliability of the US as a security guarantor was called into question. And, in a geo-economic context, de-risking and reducing dependence on Chinese imports and achieving a more level playing field have become key elements of strategic autonomy for the EU. For many in Europe, the idea is to cooperate and compete both with China and the United States rather than choose one over the other, and to provide third countries with an alternative to the bipolar order defined by US-China power competition. Yet, to succeed in this endeavor, the EU needs to provide mutually beneficial opportunities for third countries. This is the concept of open strategic autonomy, and some of these ideas are reflected in the defense space in the concept of a European pillar in NATO. This framing also opens up space for a constructive rethinking of cooperation with Turkey. Both sides could benefit from this. From Turkey's perspective, economically, Ankara's form of strategic autonomy is unsustainable in light of its dependencies on the EU. And in the realm of foreign policy, Ankara is finding that it is becoming increasingly dependent on the East, limiting its ability to act. For the EU, Turkey is a supplier of critical raw materials, and it could help the EU's urgent efforts to upgrade its defense industrial base. Both sides could also benefit from joint action in trade and investment promotion policies toward third countries in the Global South. But this prospect depends on the emergence of a top-level political understanding that Turkey-EU cooperation is fundamentally a positive-sum game. So far, that is not a given on either side. EU-Turkish cooperation in recent years has been transactional and issue-based. Turkey's ambivalence toward Russia throughout the war against Ukraine, its geopolitical hedging and bilateral political tensions with a range of EU member states, all are currently preventing closer cooperation with the EU. Therefore, while the synergies might be obvious on paper, in practice the political will is not there. For recommendations on what to do about this, you can read our report now.
Looking at the Turkey-Russia relationship, we have to see it from the Kremlin. If you sit there, you're not fearing the north, this is the Arctic Circle. You're not fearing the east, this is Siberia and it's yours. You're fearing Europe, west, and US assets in Europe, and you're fearing the Mediterranean and US assets in Turkey. So Russia has achieved several things. 2019, they deliver a Russian anti-missile system to Turkey, therefore preventing NATO systems to be deployed there. As a reaction, in 2020, the US kicks out the Turkish Air Force from the sale of stealth aircraft. Therefore, in Russian terms, two different reductions of the perceived threat. Then a multi-pronged relationship on energy, gas, oil, nuclear, and a minimal deployment of Turkish assets on NATO's eastern flank. So the end result is that if you look at this picture from Ankara, you're saying, rightly, that you are an asset to everybody because you talk to all sides and this will be useful at one point. If you see it from Brussels, NATO, you see it as ambivalence, or if you're less kind, as disruption. If you see it from Moscow, you have an interest in keeping Turkey as your wedge into NATO. And this is the thing to watch, because there's a war in Ukraine, we don't know where we're going, but disruption will be the Russian objective.
Turkey's role in transatlantic China policy is shaped by its desire to maintain strategic flexibility and pragmatism. On the one hand, Turkey is embedded in the Western political order. On the other hand, increasingly authoritarian Ankara also seeks engagement with non-Western powers like Beijing. Turkey views China as a potential source of economic benefits. This is particularly appealing given the stalled progress in Turkey's economic integration with the West. Despite the potential for economic cooperation, Turkey and China find themselves competing for influence in regions like Africa and Central Asia. This competition plays out in areas such as infrastructure development, security cooperation, and cultural engagement. Despite its pursuit of strategic autonomy, Turkey could play a valuable role in supporting transatlantic states' interests vis-à-vis China. Turkey's unique position and influence in regions like Africa and Central Asia could be leveraged to counterbalance China's growing influence.
This project is examining Turkey, the EU, and transatlantic relations in a new global setting. Our paper in this project has been looking from a European angle to this. Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine, now in its third year, triggered a debate in Europe on security and defense, on enlargement and reform, and on competitiveness and resilience. For me, all three debates are inherently connected to the future of the European project. Let's start with the conversation on the integration on security and defense, for example. This is a key question about two things: national sovereignty and also about defense industry. Europeans are learning how to spend more, better, and together. It will surely have implications on transatlantic relations and actually for the better. The second question is on enlargement and reform. How to better connect the countries in the neighborhood to the European Union and to its single market, and how to reform the EU to increase the EU's capacity to act have become very essential questions. Furthermore, enlargement is now perceived as a geopolitical imperative, while the same imperative is also impacting the thinking on what to do beyond the EU's borders. And lastly, competitiveness and the EU's resilience conversations are also integral parts of the debate. Since the global financial crisis of 2008, and then the COVID-19 pandemic, and followingly Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the EU's decision makers are well aware of the resilience question. The EU needs to go through its major transitions, the green and tech transitions, and make sure that its economy delivers for its citizens. So for the European Union, it's a time for a Zeitenwende, and it will be working on these three issues moving forward.